company to you as an outsourcing company or a G captive company, it no longer holds true. Actually, it no longer holds true for the industry as a whole, because that whole era of cost arbitrage and labor arbitrage is actually dead. No one buys that anymore. People buy value, and I believe that I and my team are at the center of creating it, because that's what we do. We create value out of services. So anyway, that's what Genpact does. We are in a number of different industries, different service lines. We have a very, very strong culture that we inherited originally from GE, and I think we've kept it alive. I think we've enriched it by 10x. I would believe it's the whole experience of having learned how to apply quality to services, as I was talking about. I think we've really created on our heritage. That's what we do. And we obviously have a domain expertise in that. I think in this era, and let me make one statement and I'll dive into then accelerate. I think in this era, 3-4 things are coming together in the services industry to really create value for the customer. One is the science of the process, right? And science of the process is what you learn in the business process. I heard the previous speaker talk about it too. I think that's as applicable for our industry as for anyone. That's the science of the process. I think technology infusion into that process to really make it smart and intelligent, right? I think that's the second big lever that's happening out there. Rapid progress, disruptive, influences and so on. So that's really the process technology piece coming together. The third is domain. In a services industry, for clients, what's really important is that you understand their business in the context that they operate in, the products that they have, their customers, and so on. So that's really the third for us as domain. And fourth one that I would call out is analytics. I think in this day and age when technology is making systems much more intelligent and much more faster, better, we have to ensure that that data gets converted to information, that information into insight, that insight into decisions. So you think about the context of quality today is really these 4 things. It's the science of the process, it's the technology, it is the domain, of knowing that, and it's analytics. And that's really from Genpact's perspective, just to tell you, as a company, that's what we believe in, and that's fundamentally the way we create value for our clients. Okay, I'm going to skip this. This is really a representation of all the countries we're in. Let me take you now to the topic of today, which is accelerate. The 2 big challenges out there, when you think about a large company like ours, the 2 big things that you think about. Okay? From an employee point of view, we've got 60,000 people, like I said, multilingual, different geographies. How do you excite them? How do you engage them? This could be a large majority of our employees could be, the younger age group, 25 to 30 years old. Very young, very energetic, very tech savvy, very impatient. Very much in an industry that still offers multiple careers to multiple people. How do you really engage them and excite them? Okay? The second is customers. Customers are getting very demanding, right? Because of the levers that I mentioned, they are saying faster impact. They are saying bigger impact. They're saying more relevant impact. Don't just tell me what you can do. Do make it relevant for me. Understand what's relevant for me as a customer and a business, and tell me what you can do for me. Now imagine trying to harness the energy and the fantastic energy of the young group that we have. And when I say young, I don't mean to be discriminatory. I include myself in that. People who want to make a difference, let's put it like that. How do you engage them? And collectively harness their energy so that they meet your client's objectives, who are, by the way, asking for bigger, faster impact. How do you do that? These are the 2 big challenges that Accelerate tries to solve. Okay. So 3 things really. Client priority, what's relevant to the client. The second thing, what excites your employee. And the third is, what is the outcome you achieve. Right? So really the 3 things that comes together. So what's Accelerate? Accelerate was a program. Okay? It's a very pedantic way to put it, business improvement program. It's pretty boring, right? And it's put like that. But it's a program that tries to bring together what I said, energy and impact. It's very simple, right? So how do we do that? So we launched Accelerate actually, this is the 3rd generation of this program now in our company. Accelerate 1.0 was all about ideation. All of you know what that ideation could be. Creating a program, creating energy on the floor, getting people to think about how can you improve that, how can you improve that. And generating thousands and thousands of ideas from our employees. That was the First generation. Second generation, we said, no, let's get clients involved. Let's get clients into this. Let clients and us sit together to think about how to solve this problem. That was the second generation. And the third generation now is that you start with the client. You say, hey, operating teams come together. Tell me, what's important to your client? What do they think about? What is really important to them? Is it productivity? Is it cash flow? Is it compliance? Is it regulatory? Is it innovation? What is it about your clients that would excite them? So you start with that, and you create a classic cascading tree from that. And then you get the teams together, you excite them, and you say, now let's ideate. So now you think about the linkage. What you're really doing is, you're starting from what's important to the customer, you're drilling it down to a level, which is very standard quality tools. All of you may have been exposed to that. Very, very standard way of starting with a big goal, cascading it into 4, interlinked goals, cascading it down below, then picking up anything out of that, getting your operators from the floor, and creating some exciting formats. Okay, say, okay, let's think about how to make life better. Instantly, no matter what ideas you generate across the company, guess what it will impact? It will always impact something that is relevant for your customer. Right. So that was at the heart of this. Okay, so what was the construct? So we gave this an exciting lap 1, lap 2, give it a racing analogy really. And we said, hey, let's start with the theme tree. You see that theme tree. What's theme tree? Theme tree is nothing but, to those of you who are familiar with Six Sigma as a CTQ tree, or, for those of you who are not familiar with Six Sigma, it's like a decision tree. You start with a big goal and you cascade it down to the simple stuff. Create a theme tree for every important client that we have. Out of 600 clients, we created this for about 500 clients. Okay? Then you create an ideation lab. What's the ideation lab? It's a very touch and feel. This is not about cool software. It is touch and feel. It is sticky notes. It is human energy in that room. It is the manager of that person, the associates, no matter where they are, really getting together and saying, hey, if now we have this theme tree, tell me, how can you impact this? How can you impact this metric? How do you impact this number? What can you do to make this better? Okay. And then you create a roadmap out of this. This is very important as well. You can have discrete set of 50 ideas generated, in a process team. How do you string that together? How do you know what is most relevant to do? How do you know which is the most impactful one? And then you create a roadmap, of execution. That's really the roadmap. We created almost 100 roadmaps for this. And then we said, hey, exchange labs. Now this was interesting. Now think about a team brainstorming, ideating on ideas that are relevant to the customer, but it's a standalone team and we are a global company. How do you now do cross-pollination? How do you make sure that the best ideas from anywhere gets infused for that particular client? That's exchange labs. So what we did post the roadmap was say, let's get together exchange labs. This was a term we coined just for cross-infusion. We picked up, if you're doing procurement in 5 different parts of the company in 4 locations, we will create a half-a-day session of exchange lab for all of you guys, relevant guys, to get together. Think about what did you come up with in your ideation lab for your customer. Think about how powerful that is. Right? So this is not a bunch of discrete set of people sitting across just thinking about for their own clients. This is people learning from each other. So you create a powerful mechanism in the company to make these ideas much bigger. Right? So that's how it was, and then ultimately governance. So we made it very client-facing. Clients are very excited for it. Obviously, they love the whole idea of are people thinking about improvements? 2, you harnessing collective intelligence across the company. Okay. Talk to you about what the channels were. Just some numbers out there. Like everything, we always measure everything to death. So I'm not going to go through all the numbers. Yeah, go ahead.
When you go to the customers, how do you make sure that they don't come back to you with some unrealistic demands?
Define unrealistic.
No, something that's not achievable, or they make use of that opportunity as something which is you are not contractually bound to give.
That's a cultural piece that you asked. We don't think like that. And I think I can very fairly say that for the company. The spirit with which this is done is partnership. The spirit with which this is done is not a provider doing a contractual service for a client. None of my guys, by the way, none of my black belts and MVPs, apart from knowing what our productivity and commitments are on the outcome, I never encourage them. Because you see, to think about contracts, because contract is a limiting concept. It is important in the world of business. It's important. However, when you try to create value for the customer, at that time, I think you should have unfettered thinking. Right? You're pushing the art of the possible. That's what you're doing. Now, of course, there are P&L owners, and I completely recognize that. There are P&L owners out there who will think about, give this value for free. In this, let's partner with them. In this, let's try to commercialize it. That's fine. But not the set of people who are ideating and thinking about value. That's not their job. Okay? For me, that job is unfettered thinking, push the art of the possible, push the envelope, think about what's the best you can do. There are other people to worry about commercialization, margins, and profitability. Yes, get in that business. But not the same set of people. Okay, how do you create this tangible employee engagement, right? How do you really do that? So I just put together some bullet points on how do you get people excited, okay? So recognizing the fact that this is the next generation, at least next generation to me, we created a mobile app, okay? We said, hey, you want to give ideas through the mobile app. Make it as simple as that, no big software, no big, not a big thing, just a mobile app. Very quick, very nifty, very exciting. We did quizzes, we did treasure hunts, we did all of that to really create a buzz on the floor. Okay? We did express training. This was around 12,000 people trained across the globe. Obviously, we are lucky to have a lot of depth in our organization in terms of people who know Lean and who know some of this stuff. So we were able to go across the company. But the whole idea of this was a blitz, a packed, very focused, spanning across 10, 12 weeks of blitz. Because after that, the energy starts, dipping. You can't sustain this, over a year. What you have to do is a blitz, a campaign. You do it, through multiple interventions, and you create roadmaps after those, 3 or 4 months. That's how it was. We got some employee feedback there. Obviously, people loved it. There were lots of these acknowledgements and awards and all the stuff that people liked. We especially took care of communication. We actually got a few graphic designers to work with us. The look and feel of it has to be very exciting. We were very careful about how we communicate internally, to our employees. It has to feel good. It has to be exciting. So we actually, you'll see something like, has your client reviewed the value roadmap yet? For example, this was about the milestones as to how the racing track is going to go. We got our CEO involved, we got our business leaders involved. So the whole idea of this was, again, buzz, communication, and high visibility campaign around what we're trying to do. Just some scoreboards. We gave this the analogy of the racing car, so we just, and again, it was relevant at that time. I think, I'm not sure if that Formula One had just happened, but I do remember racing was on top of people's mind at that time, so we took that analogy. So again, as you can see, client priorities, team trees, ideation lab, and express training. That's how the scoreboard ran around our construct and around our this thing. It was very successful for us. What's the way forward? And then I'll open it to questions. I'm sure there'll be other stuff you may want to know. I think for us, fundamentally, this could be the next generation for continuous improvement. Okay. I think the missing link, according to me, of CI. So let me step back. A lot of the buzz in our industry is around transformation today. Continuous improvement word is becoming a little bit dated. Okay. To me, as a purist, and maybe I've been with the Six Sigma fraternity for a long time. For me, transformation could be defined, and I'm sure there'll be different views out here, but I'll give you my view. Transformation can be defined as a series of continuous improvements moving towards an end state. Traditionally, what CI has lacked is that end state view. What CI has normally done is incremental improvements, but not moving towards a future state. It keeps creating improvements, but not necessarily towards a big picture. Okay? Fundamentally, what this approach does is to bring it much closer. Now, the end state here may not be disrupted. There is a whole different framework and a whole different approach that we also do for transformation. I'm talking about CI today. But the link between the two is this. What is important to your client? So therefore defining that end state before you get into ideation and a CI roadmap. So that's the two takeaways I would give you, today. That obviously now, if the end state and the future state is big ticket, you need disruptive technology for it. You need to think about differently of analytics or domain or process, the four levers I talked about. So be it. Maybe this is not the right channel then. But what this will do is that the energy of the people who think about it, who are doing work every day, is harnessed to make your client's life better. How nice is that? Right? So you're achieving both objectives. So that's what really I had. I don't have a lot of other pages, I think. Yeah, that's what we have. Open for questions.
So the question is more on the executive part of it.
Yes.
From your speech, we understood that
you tell me your company and your
I work for Sutherland actually.
Okay.
So especially for a big retail client where these ideas from the frontline sales are very important for them actually. So especially with the customer interface on the website and stuff like that.
Right.
So from your speech, we understood that there were experts who will assist the team in that. But who's the driving factor behind this? Is the service delivery team just as a part of it, or is there a team formation on it? Or how do we motivate employees to go ahead? And is there any special approach that you took to make it successful? Because we tried this many part of time. Well, it worked very well, but it did not work for a very long time actually. So somewhere down the lane, that.
So you're asking 2-3 different questions really. So you're asking the key people, the key players in this?
Right.
And you're asking sustained versus a blitz in this? Okay.
And then how do we motivate the actual customer, the target audience actually?
The customers?
The target audience. So this is to get employee. I mean, the frontline person will come and tell us the innovative way of doing things actually. So.
Yeah. Okay, let me try and attempt this. I don't know if I can touch upon all the various aspects of the question. There were multiple things in there, but I'll try. This is the operating teams with some specialist groups like us, so the quality and the domain groups like I talked about. People who understand the science of process, which is us. People who understand the science of domain, which is for us a practice group, really who understand various processes and we know what they mean, along with the operating teams, absolutely. So that's as far as that's the team, that's a core team within each client group that will work on this. Okay?
So this is a collaborative team actually.
It's absolutely collaborative, 100%. You would always get the operators in to the ideation lab. You may not get them at the theme tree side. Now, theme tree may be more the managerial level and upwards, where people understand how to cascade client priorities. See, it's tough, I'll tell you. I mean, if you talk to a CFO and he says, cash flow is really important to me, how do you make that relevant to the operator on the floor? Think about it. Okay? Somebody says controllership, regulatory compliance, is my biggest thing this year. CFOs can say that. How do you make that relevant to the operator on the floor? So the theme tree, and therefore that missing link, is what the leadership of that client and the managers together can do. And we've got, again, standard frameworks to do it, but honestly, it's not a secret sauce. I'm sure, for people who know that enough, can do that. I think once you do that, then to get the operators together and think, okay, now you don't have to think about controllership and you don't have to think about cash flow. You think about days to pay, for example. They understand that because that's how their work gets measured. Okay? So that linkage may be, invisible, but you know that the linkage is there in that. So that's how you make it relevant. How to engage as a cultural piece, honestly, it depends on the culture of your company. In our company, what works extremely well is coming together of the leadership and the operators on the floor. It works very well. And it's very intense, it's very meaningful, and it's continuous. I could not describe it for everybody. It just depends on what the underlying culture of the company is. But fundamentally, and I personally think the premise of any quality organization is based on the fact that people like making their lives better. Fundamentally. People like to make their lives better. So if you recognize them, if you work with them, if you incentivize them, the ways can be different. Our company is informal. Informality works very well for us. If it's a more hierarchical, driven company, maybe there's some other levers. But fundamentally, what you're doing is for that individual, you're creating an ecosystem that excites that person to contribute. That's how I would say. Now, what that ecosystem is, you'll have to figure out what works well for your company. Sorry, Scott.
Yeah. Thanks, Ritu. Share your thoughts. My name is Swara. I'm from IIT. You talked about, so just want to know how difficult or easy was to have those cross-pollination of you talked about cross-pollination of ideas, and what mechanism you use to have those ideas for cross-pollination, because it's a challenge in the industry to have a cross-pollination. So your thoughts on that?
So I think what we did, what worked for us, was that we did some of the pre-work before. So for example, benchmarking as to what this process should be like. It's operating at this level, it could operate at this level. Now we have, again, we've got process maturity models that we work with, right? I mean, a process can be A, B, C, or D. So when you look at a process, you should be able to define, is it a mature process or not? If it's not, then how do you, progress it? Okay?
So you benchmark internally or externally?
We have both, but for this we benchmark internally. I mean, again, I think it comes from being a large company. Our internal benchmarks are always very relevant within an industry set that we do. For many industries, I wouldn't say for all. I mean, if you ask me about telecom, I would say no. If you ask me about a lot of the banking, financial, insurance, consumer, retail, pharma, we've got a fair set of clients over there to do benchmarking. However, just telling you examples of pre-work. So benchmarking, we did VSM exercises. Sorry about the acronym, value stream mapping, which is really, getting through value stream maps, before that. So you identify waste, rework opportunities, inventory build-up beforehand. So you get that to your meeting saying, this is how I do it. These are the inefficiencies I have. This is how I've tackled it. So, you create a structure before, that meeting to do. And the second is it's a very intense facilitation. Okay, some of those exchange lab I facilitated myself and my frontline DRs, okay? Intense facilitation. Because yes, these are the kind of meetings that can very often become, oh, but that's not applicable to me. No, but why not? I'll give you a classic example. It's a great example, I'll tell you. Anyone who's processed a transaction knows that first time right is not something that happens, right? I mean, and that transaction could be anything. It could be a claim, it could be an invoice, it could be a payment you're trying to make, whatever that is, whatever that transaction, it will get stuck. Okay. Now it gets stuck, what is the classic reason? There can be a reason the input's not okay, something didn't happen, the information is not there, whatever it is. Typically, okay, and think about this. Typically what will happen is if you ask the insurance guy that, oh, insurance, just go to retail and just figure out how they do it. But I'm insurance. Nothing to do with CPG. No, but you do. Because by the way, you may be working on claims and the other guy is working on a loan and somebody else is working on an invoice bill pay. But guess what? When that gets stuck, there are 6 reasons why it gets stuck. And when you start resolving those reasons, you will suddenly find there's a lot of commonality. So actually, I don't care which industry you're working on this. Okay? So, example of where you have to push that thought process and say, okay, tell me, how did you improve your first time right? Very simple. And a lot of people can talk to that. How do you improve your first time right? It was 70%. How do you create 95%? What are you at? Oh, I'm at 80%. Why? Because of this. Have you talked to your customer that they should be giving you electronic inputs instead of manual inputs? No, why not? You understand what I'm saying? So therefore, there is actually very interesting common denominators that you can find out depending on the type of work. Sometimes it's the industry axis, it is. Sometimes it is a process axis. Sometimes even it's a technology axis. You could be using SAP and Oracle, and I know some of you are from Oracle. Anybody from Oracle here? No? Okay. The same ERPs can be used very differently by different people. Okay? So